And welcome into a carrier update. I've got the Sultan of Sonar, Zach Strickland, here with me. Zach, what is Sonar telling us today?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I've got our van and reefer outbound tender rejection index here. Just to break it out a little bit, I've been talking a lot about the national rejection rate over the last bit, how it's kind of, it went up significantly yesterday. We had a big jump after a little weekend lull. So I broke them out a little bit. We had another day where the rejection rate for the nation came down slightly, which is interesting. Again, this week, we're normally expecting some significant tightness coming online, as we get closer to the holiday. Well, we're still kind of flatlining. So we came up a little bit yesterday. Van, no big moves in the reefer rejection rate. Van staying about where it's been over the last bit, just over 25.6%. Reefer rejections really not popping like you would expect this time of year. We got produce seasons going on in California and Florida. And it's really not having as significant of an impact as the winter weather stuff did back in March. So not as much upward pressure on rates in these environments. Contracts, of course, are increasing, so we're getting a little bit better compliance on that end. Some of those produce moves are seeing some pretty significant increases on their rates because it's produce, and they do operate a little bit independently of each other. So, for the time being, though, it looks like capacity is not tightening that strongly like you would normally see this time of year with Memorial Day.
Do you think this is a function of routing guides being refortified, ship rates, contract rates being bid up a little bit? I mean, is this surprising to you right now?
Yeah, it is a little bit surprising in the way that we're not seeing as much increase. Normally we see a big bump and then it comes back down, right after the holiday, which I still think is happening. We're just, the bump is very muted at this point. If you look back around Good Friday here, that's sort of what I would expect. Maybe not to that same level, but I would expect a 26 to 27% tender rejection rate, very likely here over this week. But it doesn't, there just looks like there's too much resistance there. If we look at the volume, the outbound tender volume index here, so it's not because of demand. Demand for both reefer and van on the rise once again as we get closer to the holiday. Shippers trying to get all that freight pushed out as fast as they can. You see the outbound tender volume index for van just popping right here, but the rejection rate came down. So that to me tells me that we are still in that point where a lot of these contract rates have to be a lot better than they were this time last year or even just a few months ago. And of course, reefer, the same situation for reefer. These contracted rates for reefer are, they have to be better, because capacity comes offline, people take vacations at carriers, there's just not as much availability. And if we look at our next, the map here, the tree map of the weighted rejection index, so normally we look at this on a map, just looking at the country itself, we're not seeing a huge increase in weighted rejection rates, in some of the largest markets up there, but you see Charlotte leading the way with the weighted rejection index. And of course, the weighted rejection index is the combination of tender rejection rate, weekly change, and market share value. So it doesn't want to say Bismarck, North Dakota. Right. We don't value Bismarck, North Dakota the same way we value like Ontario and Atlanta, which you see are still two of the top weighted rejection index values in the United States, as that tender rejection rate, week over week change is really driving a lot of that. And down here in the bottom, Baltimore, Maryland, this was a hot market last week. It's cooling off again, so it's coming back to reality, something we would expect out of a small market. So let's take a look at the Charlotte, North Carolina market in a little bit more detail here. So Charlotte, typically a backhaul market, so more in than out, not a lot of production, a lot of consumption. It's a big metropolitan center out there. So tender volume index for Charlotte, though, trending much higher. You see that winter weather event, kind of propelled it higher, but then we're seeing even a breakthrough in terms of overall volume out of Charlotte being a lot stronger than it was in peak season, way back, in December, at the end of November. So it's not an all-time high, but it is significant in the way that volumes are growing out of this backhaul market. And tender rejection rates, of course, reflecting that, jumping all the way from near 22.5% last week to 28.73%.
It seems, I was talking to somebody yesterday, Rick Metzler, who runs a regional parcel carrier out in Texas, and he was just talking about how it's peak season in June for parcel carriers, and it seems like it's becoming peak season here a little bit early in the Charlotte market. I mean, that is such a huge increase in both tender rejections and in tender volumes over a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, this right here is significant. I mean, this looks like what I would expect to happen across the rest of the country for Memorial Day. Shippers getting as much freight out before they can, scheduling it into next week before they take vacations. Carriers, of course, not in position to take care of this business. This is a Memorial Day pattern that I would expect for a lot of the other markets.
All right, so maybe that is going to be played out over the next few days. Going to have longer lead times, more rejections, and some more freight coming through the markets. Not that we can even handle it right now.